Hello folks, this is the modeler I've got to weather today. I'm going to do a quick procedure, fairly quick procedure on it. It's going to be as much like the reference as I can make it. I'll show you that in a minute. We've got orange to go onto the front of these areas in front of the doors. The sliding areas are orange like the reference on the Nostromo for the movie. And I'm going to start by putting in a messy, very thin pin wash into a few little areas just to bring out detail. You can see there's a number of different changes in shadows on the surface of these things. Some of the panels are picked out in a lighter grey, some are darker, there's some dirty messy bits on it. You can see there's a variation in colour on each one of these panels. So we're going to start, where shall I start? I'm going to start by putting a slightly lighter grey on. Okay, first pass with a cocktail stick. Yeah, super techno. Okay, so I just use this to mask off various edges just to give a little bit more of a definition. Interesting point, when I just shot that grey on with the airbrush, the thinners that I used were standard cellulose thinners. And that's because mixed with the Tamiya, it works really nice. And it also etches into the car primer that's on there. But the subsequent layers, like this one that I'm about to put off, I'm about to thin down with X20 because I don't want the thinners, which is going to be wet, to attack the paint that's sitting underneath it. I'm now going to put on a few little highlights on the edge, and then I'm going to hit it with, it looks like black on this, but I doubt very much whether it is. Black's a bit of a no-no when it comes to weathering. I'm going to do it dark, but there's going to be a touch of warmth in there. But I'm also going to try and pick out a few more of these details on the edge like this. Anyway, the washes sometimes leave an edge to them, but what you're trying to do with this pin wash is put in the same colour you're about to shade it with an airbrush, because an airbrush won't take the paint into the corner of something, you'll have to spray like hell and it'll just be all over the place. So pop in a pin wash of the same colour you're going to do your shadowing with, and that'll then fill the corner. I've just put a final matte coat on there. I have a special paint mixed up with 35% matting on it, which gives a full flat finish, but also allows you to put it on wet without getting too much texture, which is nice. And that's removed a lot of the contrast between the shadow and the grey, and also the highlights and the grey. So that's muted it, knocked it back a little bit, which is what I wanted. And now it's going to be weathered. Now, before I said black's no good for weathering, and normally I would never use black, but because the Narcissus is pure white, weathered only with graphite powder, I'm going to use graphite powder to weather this. So, graphite powder is pretty funky stuff. It's treacherous to use. It goes all over the place. It makes a right old mess. And the procedure is with lots of very soft brushes. I've done it before on the Narcissus for a practice, and I'm going to be using these fan brushes and other little things. I'm going to use a stiff brush to make the marks in the recesses, because that will actually rub it into the surface and leave a nice blackness to it. So yeah, I guess I've not really done this before. I normally use paint. So here we go. Let's see what happens. So we're working this into all the little tiny divots, and you don't have to be too careful with this. You see it's all hanging around on the surface. Just don't disturb it until you need to rub it into an area. And if you press down hard and stipple it, it really goes into the surface. It won't come off unless you rub it off with a rubber, which is what, or an eraser if you're from America. We don't call them rubbers in America, do we? Because that would be a right old mess. Anyway, you rub it off with an eraser, which will bring up the highlights again. So if you want to, hello, clicky thing. I'll get to the eraser shortly, and then you'll see exactly how it lifts the whole detail thing back out again. But first of all, I'm making sure I'm getting it nicely contrasting between the highs and the lows. And then I'm going to vacuum it. I'm not going to blow it because the workshop will be full of this stuff. It's going into a vacuum with a good bag in it. I've learnt my lesson. Right, so that's given it a first quick pass, just rubbing it in. Now I'm going to hoover it off. I sucked up my fan. There she blows. When you're hoovering greeblies, always block up your thing a little bit with a couple of tissues. Okay, let me show you what we've got now. You can see where the surface of the paint has been greyed, and I've rubbed it into the surface with the brush. It's quite a coarse brush. This leaves quite a messy appearance, which is quite nice. But unfortunately, it always catches on the edges, which removes the highlight from the undersurface. And the next thing to do is to hit it with a rubber or an eraser. And I'll show you what that does in a minute. I'll find a nice spot. There we go, look. See this bit here with detail on it? I've rubbed it, and I don't really want the detail on the high spot. I want the dark grey to be in the recess on that panel, just so that it looks like thin black lines. So, I'll try and film what I do. Hopefully it'll work. Right, so what I'm trying to do is bring back definition to this blobby bit here with needed putty rubber. So you can see if I touch that, it immediately takes some of it off the surface. So you can add lines to your panels, directional lines. This is now just taking it off the top surface, and it's leaving on that panel the last little section that was greyed that is in the grooves, which is what I was after. So I'll continue that. Just rub on that panel. See how it takes away the lines and reveals the other lines. And because this is a kneaded putty rubber, I can flatten it off. Just get underneath, which is well handy. So it totally transforms what you've done with the graphite into something a lot more manageable. You can see the top corner there. That's similar to what happens on the Narcissus when you're weathering it. So you get the panel done like that, then you start to hit it with a little bit of a rubber. Totally changes the way it looks. So you can clean it up quite dramatically if you want to. The crucial thing is, when you've finished this stage, anything extra that you add will start to manoeuvre the graphite that's still on the surface. So you can tend to get yourself lost pretty quickly doing this. So what I have a tendency to do is to get the nice detail like that exposed, hit it with a clear coat, a matte clear coat, and then do the next weathering pass with the graphite, which is usually messier and more streaky. It's hard to do everything all at once. So yeah, I'm learning. But you can see how it comes off and highlights things, you know. Okay, we've got it to a level now where it's pretty messed up. We're looking at all the dirt in all the crevices. There's a few little details I'm not super happy with, but what I'm careful of doing here is trying to keep this looking similar to the weathering on this. So this is a pretty faithful reproduction of the weathering on the Narcissus. It looks messy because it was in the movie, and that's what I'm trying to replicate. All these really weird individual lines and streaks that were seen on the original model. But what I don't want to do is over detail this in comparison to this, because I want the two to sit at the same scale. So what I'm going to do is do a bit of freehand airbrushing just to pick out a few corners where I think it needs to pop. I'll highlight a few panels and a few little things just to give it some surface level. I want to split that level. It's almost 2 levels now. You've got a grey and a black and one of white. I want some highlights. So that's the next pass. Here we go. Now it gets to the stage where everything is getting a little bit blurred. Because of the freehand airbrushing, you've not got any super tight edges. So now what I'm trying to do is put the final layer of graphite on. So that's it. I'm going to leave that until the model's done. This is the tester model, and just to give you an idea of the colours that are going to be together, we're going to have the white and the grey support. I think it should look pretty good. Yeah. Hope you like it. That's it. The base is done.